Cool. So once again, officially announcing start of the workshop, build your first Spotify app. It's going to be a very interactive workshop. I strongly encourage all of you to ask questions in the chat, whenever you have some feedback, whenever you have some insights. So Alvaro kindly agreed to answer everything in his own pace. Right. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And without you, Alvaro, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Welcome everyone to this first workshop here in Lebagon, Tokyo. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for your invitation. So for the session today, the idea is to build your first application using the Spotify APIs. There is a repository which already contains the template that we will use in the second part of the workshop, but no worries, we will reach that point afterwards. So I'm going to start the presentation by presenting myself, right? So I'm Alvaro Navarro. I am based in Madrid, Spain, and I'm developer advocate at Spotify. So what do developer advocates do in a company, right? That's one of the typical questions we're getting all the time. So we are the bridge between external developers, community, people using our technologies, APIs, etc., and the company. So our job is to build that bridge between external developers and internal developers. We love delivering talks, workshops, creating great samples, documentation, prototypes to inspire developers using our technology. The photo you see in the background is one of the photos I took in my last trip to Tokyo. Was amazing trip, really miss that city. I wish next time I will be, delivering the workshop there with you all. This is the Mandarake library if I recall correctly, it was in Shinjuku. It was a really, really nice experience. Okay, what is the typical question we're getting at this point, right? What is Spotify for developers? I'm sure you all know Spotify, right? You are all happy users of Spotify. We are the audio streaming platform and service. But what is this developer platform? Well, so we are the developer platform delivering technologies for people building cool stuff around the technologies that we deliver at Spotify. So if you go to the portal, developer.spotify.com, you are going to find several products. So we have from web APIs, SDKs, and something called widgets. So let's take a look quickly to each of them. The first one is iOS and Android Sdks. These SDKs allow you to control the playback from a mobile app. So the typical use case for using these SDKs is, for example, when you are using an application in your mobile and you want to display, for example, the current track, which is being playing in the Spotify official app. Or you are using a GPS application and you want to, skip to the next track, or you want to do whatever with your playback. That is the typical use case for integrating the SDKs. The SDKs are open source and they are hosted on GitHub, so you can take a look and feel free to contribute. The next one is the widgets. The widgets is a small library written in JavaScript for embedding things like, for example, the playlist or for introducing an artist and you want to see the latest album on one specific artist, you can embed the whole list of tracks in your website. The next one is the Web Playback Sdk. This is a really cool JavaScript library which allows you to create a Spotify instance, like a Spotify client, in your browser. What does it mean? It means that you have your Spotify official app in your mobile, in your desktop, wherever. You can, with this library, you can create a new Spotify client in your browser. So you can switch between the official app and your browser web application to play your favorite music. All right. So here in the screen, you see the typical window or the typical dialog you get on what is called the Spotify Connect, the ability to have ubiquity in your music when switching different devices. The library, it's the point of this library is that you need the Spotify premium account for using it, and it's not going to be covered during this workshop, but that's something I leave you as when we finish as a potential improvement for the application we are going to build today. And finally, the web API. Okay, So for the web API, so we have around 70 endpoints, all of them based on RESTful architecture style. There are different groups of API, from getting metadata about music, about artists. You can control your playback with other APIs. You can get information about your profile. Who are you? Please give me my playlist, give me my saved songs, etc. And these are the APIs, and this is the technology, the product that we will be using today in the workshop. The APIs requires authentication using OAuth 2.0, but no worries, because we are going to cover this in the second part of the workshop. So now that we have an idea about the 4 main products that we are offering in Spotify for developers, let me show you some inspirational examples. So what can you do with Spotify for developers? What other people are building out there, right? The first one is one of my favorites applications. So this one is it's called Authorization. It's really cool because it's open source. I leave you here the URL of the repository, so you can take a look to the source code. This application is a web-based application using web APIs, and if I recall correctly, also web Playback SDK for reproducing the song. So the point is reproducing the idea, the experience about using all iPod style, all iPod device. So you can browse your playlist, your favorite artists, you can move between songs, etc., and you can even play it from the application. So the job of the work done on the front end is amazing. As you can see, it's totally similar to using an iPod again. The second one is called Winampify. Similar to the previous one, a bit of nostalgia here. It's if you recall this old music player called Winamp. The idea of this application is to reproduce again the experience of using again Winamp, but instead of with your MP3 files, with Spotify. So you can play your playlist, you can play your favorite artists, etc., based on this application. It's a JavaScript application. Again, this one is open source, so you can take a look to the source code. It's really, really cool, because also recreates like desktop from late 90s, etc., and the experience is really nice. A bit different, also using web APIs from Spotify. It's Radionewify. All the names, there is like a common pattern for all the applications. Pretty much everything ends with something fi. This is it's funny. So this one is a bit different. So the idea of this application is to create playlists based on songs or artists that you have never played before. So once you start using the application, it's going to track all your analytics, all your historical playlists, etc., and it's going to propose you something new based on the artist you have never you have never played before. This one is not open source, but it's worth a try. Setify, it's an application, another web application, and the idea of this app is to recreate a playlist from concerts. Let's imagine you go to a Radiohead concert in July 2018. You have a lot of fun in this concert, and you would love to to recreate the playlist that the artist played in that concert. So this application allows you to create a playlist and share it with the rest of the users. This one, another open source application, it's Artist Explorer. This one is based on the similarity between different artists. So for example, in this screenshot you see on the screen, start with Radiohead, and it's recommend you similar artists based on the genders and the styles of Radiohead, such as Setify, Interpol, etc. From there, you can start building like a recommendation tree based on the original artist. It's really cool as well, this one. Again, using web APIs from Spotify for retrieving information and data about artists and styles. And the last one is Magic Playlist. This one is a recommendation app that is using natural language for creating playlists based on recommendation. Let's say, for example, like the example you see on the screen, I want to listen hip hop when I commuting on a weekday. Okay, so the application is creating using the specific words like hip hop commuting a weekday. It's going to take these words and it's going to create a playlist based on these specific keywords. So question is, what if altogether we create our own recommendation app? Okay, so that is exactly the purpose of the workshop we are right now. So what is the agenda for today? I'm going to start introducing the Spotify APIs. Then we are gonna cover authorization. That's an important topic because that is the first step you need to implement whenever you use the API. Then we are gonna make our first API call, and then we are gonna build a simple recommendation app. Okay, so we are gonna use web API, which is already in place, and the idea is to build the application, node-based application using this API. Okay, and then we're gonna finish with some next steps and some recommendation in case you want to go further. You have fun with the workshop. You want to implement something even cooler. All right. So what is the Spotify API? Before I continue, something I talked with Sasha is that in this second part of the workshop, I'm going to be switching between the slides and Visual Studio Code for coding. So if you have any question, please feel free to use the chat. And so if, it's okay if you want to interrupt me to ask whatever you want, it's totally fine. Okay, so we can do this more dynamic instead of me talking the whole time. But in any case, we will have a Q&A session after the workshop. So if you have another specific question, we can wait until the end. All right, so Spotify Web API. So the idea in a nutshell is what you see on the screen. Okay, so we have my application and we have Spotify. And the way we are gonna both be connecting is using Web API. Later, when we cover the authentication, we will see there is a new element in the screen. It's called the user using the application to access Spotify, but we are going to cover this in a moment. But so far, the idea is we have my application and is sending API requests and getting responses from Spotify. We have in the portal, the best way for learning the APIs is by playing with them, right? So I'm gonna go to the portal quickly because I want you to take a look to what is called the console. I guess you can read the browser. Okay, yeah, I think so. So, okay, so we have two elements in the portal for interacting with APIs. We have what is called the console and the API reference. So the console can be accessed from this menu, and it's gonna represent all the APIs, all the endpoints here in a way that we can interact with them. We can make API calls directly from the portal. The APIs are organized according to resources, like, for example, albums. So if you want to work with albums, we can retrieve one album, or we can get several albums, or based on one album ID, I can get the list of tracks from the album. Okay. So if you, let's say I want to, okay, I'm going to click on artists, for example, and I would love to get information from one specific artist. So that's going to be the API. It's going to be called V1, which is version 1, and then artist. And then it's going to receive in the URL the ID of the artist. No worries, we are going to work on this in a moment in the code, but just for you to know that the console here is allowing us to play with the APIs directly from the portal. There is something called here, what's called the get token button. This button is going to implement the authentication, directly in the portal. That's something we are going to do in our application. But in case you want to, play with an API, you can come here, you can click on get token, you can request a token, and you can say, okay, if I send here one specific ID, I can click on try it, and the console, the application here is gonna create the request. I can even copy and paste this in console, and it's gonna show me here the JSON, the response from the server. In this case, we are sending artist and this identification for the artist, and the response is telling us, okay, this is here, name is Radiohead with a high popularity, it's an artist, and you can have a link to the internal Spotify URI. Okay, so if you copy and paste this into the application, you can go directly to the artist. You also get more information, like, okay, this is alternative rock, art rock, etc. And what is this here? And some images for in case you want to get information. For example, you can copy and paste this, and you get the cover or the image from the artist. Okay, so everything is self-contained in the response. From the console, what we can do also is to get access to the API reference. So if I click on Get Artist, a new tab is going to be open, or in this case, because I open a new tab, but it's gonna get redirect you to the API reference, and the API reference is very, very similar to the console, but you cannot make any API call from in here. But the idea of the API reference is to show the whole documentation of the endpoint. In this case, it's telling us this is a get. This is the URL or the endpoint that we will be sending to the server. Is receiving one argument, the ID of the artist, and the API could return several answers. 200 if everything went fine, 101 in case there is a problem with the authentication, the token part, etc. So you can read, you can get access to the schema of the response of the API. Okay. You have two possibilities. Usually when you work with APIs, you can try directly from the portal, and you can get access to the JSON. I say, okay, this API is returning me information. I can read the JSON, and I can access all the fields from the JSON response. So in my application, I can parse them, I can read them, and I can do whatever I want. Or you can go to the API reference, and you can understand the schema. The schema is like the definition of the response, or how the response looks like in terms of objects. So in this case, it's very similar to the example. So the name is telling us it's a string, is the name of the artist, the popularity is going to be an integer, etc. So it's the proper contract between the specification between from the API when we are consuming this API from the server. All right. So as I said before, I really highly recommend you to play a little bit with the console, with the API reference as well, because it's the best way to really get to know the APIs with more details. All right. So back to the presentation. Okay. So we covered already the reference, the console. We have 4 categories of APIs. The first one is for fetching Spotify catalog info, exactly the API we have been playing 1 minute ago. I want to retrieve information from one specific artist. I want to get the cover image from one album. I can get it, please give me the list of tracks from a specific album, etc. I can even get a 30 seconds MP3 format preview URL. Okay, so that's something we're going to be using in our one application. The second group is the control playback. We know that we can, we have our Spotify application, desktop, mobile, etc. With these APIs, we can control remotely the playback. We can stop, we can skip next song, we can pause, etc. We can also modify the volume. That's the typical, events that we are when working with the playback. The next one is to manage your Spotify account. You can get information about yourself. You can see your ID. You can see the URL of your profile. You can see your playlist. You can create new playlists. You can even modify your existing playlist, etc. Of course, you can also follow and follow artists and this kind of interaction that you usually do in the official Spotify application. The next one is retrieve analytics and recommendation. This is one of the APIs, the endpoints we will be using in our app. So the idea is to, based on the input, the API is going to recommend you similar tracks and similar artists. Okay, so I'm not going to spend more time on this because we will be covering this in the application. So I'm sure you will understand much better when integrating the API. Yeah, so that's what's around the APIs. I cannot read the chat in case there are some questions. But okay, Sasha, just let me know if there are any questions or whatever. Okay. Okay, so time to cover the authorization. The authorization step is usually is the first step when using APIs. All right. So what is authorization? Sorry, lost the track. Authorization is pretty much the process of granting an application access to permission to Spotify. So the idea is I'm a user. I'm a Spotify user, sorry. I'm using one specific app, for example, the ones I showed you before in the presentation, the one is the Winamp, the one which is recreating the iPod, etc. I'm a user using one of these apps, and I want to use it to get access to my Spotify account, okay? So the app, what it's gonna tell you is, hey, do you give me permissions to access on your behalf to Spotify? And you say yes or not, it depends on the application. And the app is gonna get this authorization, go back to Spotify and say, hey, the user allows me to get access to the data. And then Spotify is gonna answer, okay, here you have a token and you can use it for getting information from me. For example, the profile of the user, create new playlists. You can also get access to the metadata about artists, albums, etc., and all the interaction with the rest of the API. All right. So what do we have here? We have three different ways of implementing authorization, right? So what we have at Spotify is the standard. We are following the out2 standard for getting the token and for asking the users, no, the other way around, for asking the user for permission and for retrieving the token from the system. Okay. For implementing or for what can we do for getting this access token? So we have three possibilities. The first one is the authorization code flow. The second one is the same one plus what is called the Pixie extension and client credentials flow. When are we going to use each of them? It depends on the application you are building. The first one is okay if you are building an application which is going to be running on the backend. The second one is more for a front-end application or mobile applications. And the third one, it's usually for imagine you have something in your server, like a small application running in the background, which is, retrieving getting access to or using the API is doing an operation, and then you don't care about this access anymore. The typical it's called the daemon on Unix, etc. So for something which is more concrete, so the first one is I want to get access to my Spotify account using this app, and this access is going to last, I don't know, long time. And the third one is like, okay, I'm going to use this, the access, I'm going to request data from the server, and I don't care about this access token anymore. So as you can imagine, well, this is what I have explained right now. As you can imagine, the one we will be using today is authorization code flow, okay? So this is the authorization flow we will be implementing. Okay, now it's time to go through the code flow. But before that, I'm gonna ask you something. So in the workshop description, if I recall correctly, there was a link to a repository. Is this one that belongs to my profile on GitHub? The repository is called Spotify -API -workshop. The idea is that everyone has this repository cloned locally. If that is not the case, please go ahead and clone it, because what we are going to do, we are going to use this repository as a template. We'll be coding here, and whenever we implement anything, we are going to commit and we are going to push it here. Okay, so you can synchronize the changes between me and your local repository. Another option is for you to, to code at the same time, but probably that's going to be a bit difficult because I mean, following at the same time and coding is not always easy. But it's totally up to you. So if you want to clone this one, go ahead, and I'm gonna give you 30 seconds or 1 minute. I don't know if 30 seconds probably is too short. Okay, so okay, it's already on the chat, right? Perfect. Thank you, Sasha. Nice. So we are gonna be using, sorry, what's this? Visual Studio Code. We are gonna be using Visual Studio Code for today's session. Okay. It's okay. I mean, you can use whatever you want. I prefer VI because I'm a VI lover, but Visual Studio Code is very nice. You have a lot of extensions. You have the terminal here. You can even debug your applications within the same application. So I think it's a very good choice. All right. I'm going to go super quickly through the repository. What do we have here? Okay. So the repository contains a Node JavaScript Node application. So basically, we have one single file, is this server.js, which is going to be using Express. Express is a framework for creating web server applications. And it's really easy to create applications, even APIs using this framework. So the idea of this Express server, I don't know if you have experience using Express or not, but I'm gonna quickly cover the very, very basics. Okay. So the idea is we're gonna instantiate the framework Express, creating the application, and then we are gonna put this application to listen for incoming petitions. In this case, we are gonna use port number 3000. And once the application is up, running, and listening for incoming petition, we are going to display this message on the screen. Okay, so your app is listening on localhost and the port. We have something else here. We have something called sets and use. Okay, so for the sets, we are telling Express, hey, Express, we are going to use something called views. You can find the views file on a folder called views here, and the view engine is going to be used. We will be using something called pack. So what is this? Okay, the idea for Express is to receive petitions like requests, and we are going to respond. But for today's workshop, what we are going to do is every time we receive a petition here on Express from the browser, we are gonna process it, and the output is gonna be returned using HTML to the front, sorry, to the browser. For that, we have two possibilities. The first one is to create the HTML, raw HTML, writing all the tags, etc. Or we can use a template engine. In this case, we are proposing to use Pack. Pack is really, really easy to learn, and the idea is to have one file per template. So the content of a template looks like as follows. We are gonna use this is the syntax for Pack. If you see here, I mean, that's very, very similar. It's a one-to-one similarity of typical HTML tags, but we don't have to care about opening tag, closing tag, etc. So instead, we are gonna here describing our tree of content, and we can, something really cool that Pack is doing is that we can define our template. In this case, we have something called layout, and the rest of the templates is gonna extend the original template. Okay, so we can reuse the header of the template. So the rest of the templates are going to look like something like this. Very, very easy to follow, very easy to maintain, and not that difficult like the whole HTML file, all right? So Pack is going to take all these files, all these Pack files, it's going to process them, it's going to generate the HTML for us. All right. Back to the server. All right, so this is the purpose of these two lines. And then we have something called express.static public. Okay, so we are telling Express, hey, we're gonna use templates for using Pack, but we have more files, static files located on the public folder. In this case, we have only one single file, is the CSS. I have created this small CSS, like, for displaying tables, we're displaying links using the typical Spotify color, the green color, etc. So not a big deal. And finally, once that we have templates, we have our static content, we have here the entries, the routes for our when Express receive a request, we need to see what the request is trying to access to. For example, in this case, we have slash. We are telling, hey, whenever someone is retrieving slash, we are gonna return the index. We are gonna use response and render for parsing the index template here, the one I've showed you before. And we are gonna generate the HTML using the pack framework, runtime, and we are gonna respond back to the browser the content of the index. The syntax for creating routes on Express is basically the first argument is the root, the name, string, and the second one is the callback. So whenever someone is trying to get access to slash or slash authorize, the Express someone is calling. Express is gonna return what is inside. It's gonna execute what is inside the callback. All right. So one last thing that I wanted to show you is the dependencies. Dependencies, the package.json file, it's very small this time. So we have Express, we have the pack engine, and we have something called Node.mon. This tool is very handy when we are developing JavaScript-based applications, because it allows us to, every time we are changing something on the server.js, so we don't have to go here to the terminal, shut down the server, run again everything, etc. So Node.mon is going to detect if there is a new change on the file, and it's going to restart the server on our behalf. So, and last but not least, important, we have created a custom here for npm. Command is called start, which is going to call Node.mon like this, Node.mon server.js. So first step is to, I think I already have installed all the dependencies. The first command is npm install. I think we are up to date. Perfect. And the second one is going to, we're gonna test this small application, this small Express-based app. I'm gonna say run start. This run start is gonna be calling this command that we have described in the packet.json, and it's gonna call Node.mon. We have here everything up and running, perfect. So your app is listening on localhost 3000. So we can click here, and we have the HTML that pack has been generated using the templates. Okay, so if we click on login here, we go back here, you can see here on the console.log that we have specified here on the code. The index, I don't remember if I have covered the index already, but the index is pretty much, I mean, it's just the title. So my first Spotify app, and then we are creating a link using this word login. And whenever we click on the link, we are going to redirect the user to /authorize. So that's why on the server.js, whenever we click on the link, we are getting this console.log message. All right. Questions all clear so far? Yes.
Everything is clear. I don't see any questions in the chat. Maybe just a small question. Do we need to, so people just clone the repo. Do they need to install Express and pack additionally?
No, Express is already defined on package.json here. So the command is this one. So for installing, in order to get all the dependencies installed, is npm install here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So npm install, and then the second command that you run is npm run start.
Exactly. So far we have used two commands: install to install all the dependencies that we have here, and run start for running the server according to the start command we have defined here, right? So the beauty of using Node.mon is that if, for example, I want to change this, I want to say hello world here on the authorize, I can save it. You see here, Node.mon is automatically restarted everything for us. So if I go back to the if I go back to the server, if I click on login, and I can get the hello world message, right? Cool. Cool. Nice. Let's go back to the presentation quickly, because we are going to start coding the authorization, right? So authorization, we, as mentioned before, we are going to be implementing authorization code flow, and this authorization flow has two steps, right? The first one is request authorization. Basically, the idea is our app is going to send a petition to Spotify. Spotify is going to present this dialogue to the user saying, hey, this application wants to use your account for accessing whatever, your playlist or your email address or whatever. So are you okay with that? And then we can say okay or not. And once we click on okay, Spotify is going to return what is called the authorization code. Okay, so that is going to be the first step for implementing authorization. We send a request authorization. Spotify is going to ask you if we are okay, and then we get the code. All right. For implementing everything, best thing we can do is go to development guides, authorization guides, and here there is something called authorization code flow. I'm gonna paste here the link in case you want to take a look. Oh, sorry. Where are you? Everyone in the meeting here. This guide contains a lot of information. Probably, I mean, for the workshop is too much, but I want to focus on this table. So this table contains the information that we want to build, or the information that we need to build in the request in order to get the authorization code. All right. So let's. So basically, the idea is something called client ID, response type, redirect URL, etc. All right. So before starting to implement the authorization, we need to do something else. All right. So what is this client ID? Right. Client ID is a unique. It's a identifier. It's a string identifier, which is going to identify you as a user. Okay. So nobody else at Spotify for developers has the same client ID as you. So the first thing we need to do is to log in into the portal and generate the client ID, what is called the credential, the client ID and the secret ID. How can we do that? First step is we need to go to the dashboard, and then we need to click on login. You can use, if you don't have a Spotify premium account, you can use your free account. That's totally fine. All right. Then we need to go here, create an app. We can say here Le Wagon app and my cool new app. All right. So it's basically a name, whatever you want, and an app description. You click on the terms and services and click on create, right? Here on the left, you see something which is called client ID. Okay, so that is the client ID for this specific app. And if I click on show client secret, this is the secret for this specific app. All right. So you need to be careful to not share your client ID with anyone else, right? So I know it's funny because we are recording the workshop, and we are gonna share the recording with more people, but no worries, because I can cancel this application after the workshop. So these are the credentials that we will be using for implementing authentication. Here on the dashboard, you can see more information. You can, for example, control how many people are using your app, how many monthly active users. You can get even a map about where people using your app are coming from. Right now, I mean, everything is empty, of course, because we have just created the app. But I mean, we can take a look later after when we finish the workshop to see how this data has been updated. All right, so let's go. So we have the client ID, we have the secret, and we are ready to implement authorization. Now let's go back here to our template. And first thing we are gonna do is the idea is, when the user click on login button, the link I showed you before, we are gonna use the first step of the authorization. We are gonna send a request to Spotify, and we are gonna get the code, but the authorization code. So we are gonna remove this, and if you go to the where is this? if you go to the documentation here, you can see a code flow. The important thing is this: we need to create a GET request to the authorized endpoint. If you scroll down a little bit, you can even see here one example. Okay, so this is more or less the code we are gonna code. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and we are gonna start with the first step of the authorization. So the first thing we need to do is to let's create a variable here called out query parameters, for example. And this one, so when we create or when we send a GET request, we need to send, so we're sending the petition to the URL plus the query parameters. The query parameters, if you remember, has a format like, for example, this is the URL and api.spotify or whatever. And then my endpoint and the query parameters looks like this. This is the key, equal, value, and then we concatenate with another key and then value, etc. All right. So what we need to do is to create this the list of key and values for the first part of the authorization, right? Which are these key and values? The ones we have sent on the documentation for basically this table here. All right. Okay. So first one, it's for this, I'm going to use this handy object here, this search params, which is going to transform a list of a JSON structure into query parameters, which is very handy in this case. The first one is response type. I'm going to say code according to the documentation. So response type is going to be always code. Then I'm going to be sending the client ID. Client ID, we have it here. This one, client ID. Next one is going to be scope. Scope is going to be empty for the time being. We are going to use it on the second part. And finally, redirect URI. Okay, so what is this? Okay, so if you take a look to this diagram, basically the idea is once Spotify or once we grant permission to Spotify, Spotify is going to provide the code by using a callback to our application, right? So this redirect URI is going to be the callback or the URL that Spotify is going to be calling when with the code, with authentication code. How can we set up this? We need to go to the dashboard. We need to go to edit settings. And there is something called here redirect URIs. In this case, we are going to use localhost 3000 because that's the port we are listening for coming petitions, and we are gonna use, for example, a callback. All right, we can add it here, and we have our callback set up in our application settings. What happens if we don't specify this URI in the application settings? What's gonna happen is that Spotify is gonna redirect to something which does not exist. Is not recognizing this redirect URI, is going to return an error. Okay, that's all. We are done here. Okay, and then what we can do here is to say to add the callback we have just set up. So what happened next? What happened is that Spotify is going to call back. It's going to call us back using this URL. So what we need to do is to implement this callback. This I'm gonna, I think, for the sake of to be faster, we're gonna copy this and we are gonna implement the callback here. All right. So here, what we can do is to say we can say, okay, this is the request. The query is gonna return a code. If we go back to the documentation here, the documentation is telling us that the response is going to contain something like this. This is the callback that the Spotify is going to call back to our application, and this is going to contain the code as a query parameters and the state in case we are sending a state. For the sake of clarity, I'm not sending any in this application, but that's something you can implement afterwards. The important thing is the code. Okay, so this is what we have done here. We are going to say, okay, so once Spotify is calling back with the query, sorry, with the callback, we are gonna print in console the code. All right. Cool. So we have this. So we have created parameters, but we need to send. We need to actually send the request, right? So for that, we are gonna use a library which is called a node fetch. All right. So node fetch, it's a library which, is gonna allows us to send a get, post request from our application. So we need to do install node fetch, and we are gonna save it as a dependency. All right. So what we need to do is to say, okay, import a node fetch from node fetch. All right. Cool. Okay, I think this is it. Sorry, this is not node fetch, it's fetch, always fetch. Oops. Nice. All right. So now that we are ready, we have fetch. What we need to do is to, well, in this case, we are gonna redirect here using the redirect method from the response, and the URL that we need to redirect is this one, is accounts Spotify. This, oops, it's a string, and then we are going to concatenate the auth query parameters, and we need to transform this to a string. All right. Cool. I think we are ready to make a test. We have sent we are requesting the code, and we have here the callback, and we can print the callback on the screen. All right. So let's run this. All right. Login. Spotify is asking me, hey, the Wagon app wants to access to your Spotify account. Are you agree? Yes, I am. I have to do this all the first time. And if I go back here, I can see the code on screen, right? This is the code. This is huge string. This is the code that the Spotify is sending me back in the callback. Okay, so we are ready to implement the second part of the authorization. If we go back to the presentation, we can say, okay, now we have the code, the authorization code. I need to change this authorization code for what is called the request access token. So the idea is, again, to use the token and send a request to Spotify for requesting the token. If we go back to the documentation, we can see that the second step, request access token, is we need to send a post to the API/token using these parameters in the body. Interesting or important in this case that our request must be encoded using this the 3W format URL encode. Okay, we're gonna see in a moment how to do that. The response of the second request of second step is gonna be basically the it's gonna be here. It's gonna be a JSON structure with the access token, the content type, the token type, the time where the expiration time of the token is usually 1 hour, and in case our token expires, we can refresh a new one using this the other token. Okay. Okay. So what we need to do is similar to the example, implement the callback in the token request in the callback. Cool. So what we are gonna do is to go here to callback. We are good to go with the code. We don't need this anymore. And then first thing, we need to build the body. The body is gonna be, we're gonna be using URL search params again. We are gonna send something called code. According to the documentation, we need to send run type, always set to authorization code, the code, which is containing the code we have returned from the previous request, and the redirect URI. Actually, this is not, as the documentation says, it's not actually a redirection, but it's a value that must match the previous value we have sent on the first step. So the code is going to be code, redirect URL, URI. is going to be redirect. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create some nice here cons redirect URI. It's going to be this. Client ID is going to be this one. Much better. So here we send client ID and the redirect URI. All right. Redirect URI, and finally run type. Run type, it's equal to authorization code. Oops, sorry, it's not equal, semicolon. Cool. Now we're gonna use node fetch to send the post request to Spotify server. So we are saying, okay, so this one is gonna be response equal fetch. I'm gonna use wait because I want to send the request in a asynchronous way. So I don't want to keep here waiting until I get the response. So I'm gonna use a wait, fetching something from this URL from the token. All right. Use this one much better. And then we need to prepare the post request. The post request is going to say, okay, we're going to say we're going to send a post. We are going to send the body. The body is the one we have defined before, and the headers. So according to the documentation, again, we need to send two headers, authorization and content type. Okay, content type is going to be set to this one. So this one is easy. Headers, content type equal to this, and authorization. Sorry, so I think I can use this without authorization. No, I need the quotes. Authorization is going to be this one. According to the documentation, this is a little bit tricky because we need to send a base 64 encoded string with the following format: basic, and then the client ID and the client secret separated with a semicolon. All right, but no worries, it's not that big deal. So basically, what we need to do is, for example, let me remove this, otherwise this is not realizing about the. When I say basic. So basically, what we are doing is building the string. We need to send in the authorization string. We're going to use buffer from this is Spotify. No, sorry, it's client ID, right? If I recall correctly, it's client ID. And then we need to separate the client ID and the client secret. Sorry, this is not correct. Client secret. Like so, okay? So basically it's client ID, semicolon, client secret with the basic word at the top, and this encoded with base 64. So we have encoding this with buffer. Client secret is not defined. Let's define it here. Const client secret. All right, so client secret is gonna be here, this string. Okay. Cool. And then here to a string using base 64. Okay. So why is client secret? Client secret. Forgot to concatenate this. Nice. So I think we are good to go. Then once we have the response, what we need to do is I'm gonna get the data. I'm gonna get again response. Oops. The response we have from the fetch, and we're gonna transform it into JSON. I'm gonna say oops, console.log. I'm gonna print that screen. All right. Cool. I think we are good to go. Let's start with this. Oops. All right. So we have here a problem because we are using a wait here both, And await usually works only on asynchronous calls. So what we need to do is add here async in the callback here. All right, that should be fine now. Cool. So let's go here. I'm gonna log in. I'm getting this. I agree. And well, here we are. So we have the JSON from the response, the second part of the authentication with the access token. This is a string I will be using for calling the APIs and the rest of the information we have covered before. All right, cool. So last thing we are gonna do on this, no, I think it's for the time, I think it's fine. So what we're gonna do, let's cover the first API call. This one, how much? Wow, this time flies. Right, so now we have the token. What we need to do is to perform the API call. How can we do that? Basically, if you go to the documentation here, there is something called using the access token. The idea is that we need to send the header, the authorization header with a bearer plus the token. All right. So let's do the following. Let's do the following. I'm gonna declare here global.access token. Okay, I'm gonna use a global variable here, and I'm gonna save it here. I'm gonna say global.access token equal data.access token, because that's the field I'm interested in. Okay. Nice. And once we have a token, we are gonna redirect to, we are gonna use another template. We are gonna use, let's call something dashboard, for example. And we need to create here a new file. It's gonna be called dashboard.back here. And dashboard is gonna contain, let's see, for example, we're gonna copy from the index. That's easier. Dashboard contains is going to extend from layout, and my content, what it says specific for this page, is going to say, we're going to say something like welcome. All right. Yes, that's all. So if everything went fine, I click here, I log in, I agree. And here we are inside the application, right? You see here the URL is basically containing the callback from the authorization code. Sorry, the authorization request. Cool. Now let's do the following. Let's do our first API call. I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna here, since we are gonna be I'm gonna create a new route here on Express. It's gonna be called dashboard. So the dashboard is gonna do the following. Let's say here is, sorry, this is dashboard, and instead of render dashboard here, we are gonna render it in here, right? And on the authorization, what we are gonna do is we are gonna redirect to /dashboard. I think that's gonna be cleaner and easier to implement things inside. So now in dashboard, we are gonna say hello to the user using the user ID, okay? Right, so let's create another request. In that case, we are gonna use, if we go to the console, we are gonna use here on, what is this library? No, sorry, what's this? User profile. User profile, there is an endpoint, it's called /me, which is returning the information about the user, like my email, user ID, etc., and my avatar as well. So our first API call is basically to say the user, hey, hello, using the username. For that purpose, I'm gonna use again node fetch for fetching the data. This is the URL we are gonna use. All right, this is the endpoint, right? And then we need to prepare the petition. This one is get, according to the documentation, right? This is a HTTP method get. We are gonna send the headers. So because all API calls needs to be authenticated, as we have covered before, and the authentication is going to be using this bearer and then concatenating the global.access token. Okay, I think this is it. No, this is that's all right. Yes. Okay. And then I'm going to say data wait response.json, similar to what we have done before with the access token. I'm going to print out the data here, okay, before doing anything. Nice. Let's see how the first API call looks like. We go here, we open the browser, we log in. Again, agree, welcome. If we go back, here we have the JSON response with my profile. This is my username. This is the URL to my profile. This is my avatar, and I'm a user. All right. So now, why don't we say hello to the user using the user ID? So what we are gonna do is to use pack to receive variables from the code. In that case, you can say something like a user ID. Sorry, we are gonna pass an argument to the template. We're gonna say something called user using the data we have returned, we got from the response. Okay, so the user variable is gonna be used here. Out of user, we are interested on the ID. So we are gonna say, hey, hello, user. Okay, and what about displaying the image? So I'm going to display the image here using pack. Image is contained here on user images. This is an array of 1 and then URL. So then what we need to do is to parse this as follow. This is the variable images. We have only one single element, so we are going to index by 0 and the URL. All right. Cool. Let's see how this looks like. Nice. Login. We agree. Hey, here we are. So that's my user, and this is my avatar. This looks a bit ugly because it's huge. So what I did was I have created a CSS here for decorating a little bit the image with the circular image class. I think that's gonna look a bit better. That's circular class, right? If I recall correctly, circular image. Circular image. All right. Oops. Circular image. Okay, perfect. Here we are. Now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna commit all the changes here. I'm gonna add here the dashboard, the new template, and I'm gonna commit it to add authorization. And I'm gonna push it to the repository. Okay, so if you are following the workshop using the repository, so you now can do git pull, for example, to synchronize the changes with the remote repository. Cool. So we have implemented our first API call. We have authorization in place. Let's do something cooler. Let's create a small recommendation app. The idea is the following. So we're going to use the browser to get access to the API we have seen so far using Node and pack. And we are going to be using 2 endpoints, tracks to get my saved tracks from my profile, and recommendations. Recommendations is an endpoint which is receiving a list of artist tracks, etc. And based on the internal Spotify algorithm, is going to return a list of recommendations. Okay. So that is the idea. At the end of the workshop, we will have something up and running with it's going to display a list of tracks from my profile. I'm going to click on one of the tracks and I'm going to get recommendations based on the track I have selected. Cool. Now let's do the following. Let's I'm going to do something because I'm going to be using more API calls. I don't want to repeat this fetch every single time I'm using an API. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create here a new method. It's going to be, let's say, get data, for example. It's going to receive the endpoint. And this new function is going to be pretty much implementing this. So I can reuse this get data from different, callbacks from Express in case I want to retrieve more data from more APIs. This one, no, it's going to be generic because we are receiving the endpoint from as an argument. And data, so we receive the data, the JSON, and we are going to return the data, all right. Perfect. So then I need to translate this into the this user info, for example, get data. Oops. And this is I'm gonna add here the version because we are always using version 1, so I can put here the version. So this is the previous call translated using the get data function, right? So far we haven't we have pretty much exactly the same. So if everything goes well, I should have here the same, right? Let's see, start. So okay. Oops. Sorry, I forgot to. It's called user info. Okay. Right, login, agree, and here we are. Now the image looks way better. Nice. So let's let's implement our second API call. This one is gonna be the API who is returning my saved tracks. This one, get user saved tracks. It's this endpoint. It's me/tracks, and it's gonna return my saved tracks. So now we have this get data method in place. It's pretty easy because I can basically reuse this. I'm gonna call it tracks, for example, and the endpoint it's me/tracks. All right. If you take a look to the documentation here, we can limit the amount of tracks returned by the API. So I'm gonna limit to 5. Right. No, sorry, it's limit equal 10. I said 5, no, it's 10. 5 is the offset in case you are using pagination, but no worries about that because we are not implementing this today. Now what we are gonna do, we want to display here on the user here. After the welcome, we want to display all the saved tracks, right? So we need to pass these tracks to pack. We are going to use tracks as an argument, as a variable, and but before that, let's see how the API looks like, the response. So if I get the token here, I request the token. Sorry, and I request the token and I try it. And this is the JSON response from the API. So we have here a list of items. Each item contains track, contains available markets, which is usually huge, external URLs, etc. All right. So we have the name of the song, etc. And the same repeated for each single track saved on my playlist. So what we need to do is the following. We are going to call this this API, and we are going to pass this as track.items, because if you go to the example here, items is the array of items containing the tracks. All right. Oh, sorry, this is tracks. Okay, so important thing here is the following. If you remember at the beginning when we implemented the authorization, we had something called a scope here, okay? And I told you before, okay, so we're gonna leave this empty for the time being, and we will use it afterwards. Now is the time to use it. So we are gonna use one API which requests access to my personal data, in this case, my playlist. So the scope is a way of authorizing apps to only access to one specific features of the APIs. In other words, if I get here the token, the documentation is telling me, okay, so this API requires the following scope. something called user library read. Okay, so this is like the permissions. It's the permissions that we are going to provide to the API to limit the access to specific features only. There are more scopes here in case you want to read the email, in case you want to, to read the follows, in case you want to modify a playback, etc. So for each API, you need to take a look to the documentation and understand which scope is needed. In this case, we need the user library read because we want to read my library, my playlist. So now it's time to go to the scope here and add the user library read. All right, cool. I think we are good to go. We need to modify the dashboard because we are passing the tracks as an argument, and we need to modify this. All right, so here we are going to create a table. You have all the documentation on Pack website in case you want to see all the supported tags, all the syntax, etc. Okay, which is way easier than coding here HTML. So we are going to say T in tracks, for example, to simplify, and we are going to create here one row. Good point of Pack is that we can embed here JavaScript. We can say artist, for example, name is going to be t.track, and then if we go back to the documentation, it's track, and within track we have something called artist, which is an array, in this case an array of 1, and then we have the name here. All right, so that's going to be track artist 0 because we only have one element. Could be that one track is a track performed by several artists at the same time, so this array is going to contain more than one element. But for the sake of clarity today, we're going to assume that everyone has only one artist. All right, this is going to be the name. I'm going to keep, I'm going to keep here another, sorry, this is not correct, artist, I don't know what happened here, 0. And I'm going to keep the track name, like so. And I'm going to keep track preview URL. All right. If you remember before, we mentioned that some APIs return a 30 seconds MP3 format preview URL. So we are going to use it here to play a bit of music in the browser. Everything is here on the JSON file. So we are running out of time. So I'm gonna speed up a little bit. Now it's time to display this information. Here we are going to use Pack syntax, artist name, one column, another column is going to be track name. All right. And finally, we can concatenate several tags, HTML tags with the semicolon syntax, like so. href equal track preview, preview, for example. Right, so the idea is to display one table with 3 columns. In the first column, we are going to display the artist name, the track name, and a link to the preview, to the 30 seconds MP3 URL. All right, nice. I think we are good to go. Let's see how this looks like. I don't know if I save these changes here. Right, cool. Okay, let's take a look. Login. You see here now the Spotify is asking me that this Lebagon application wants to, to get access to my account with to be able to get access to my playlist. So if I agree here, oh, cool, nice. So you see here the artist, the track name, and the preview. If I click here, I don't know if you hear that. You heard that? I think so, right? So we have the artist, we have the track. I can click on add-on here. It's cool. A good point is if I go to Spotify, I go to my liked song here, and let's see, I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to say Queen, for example, and I go to Queen. I go to this one. I like this one. I go back to my app, I refresh, and here we are. Queen is now part of my list. All right, I can. Cool. Perfect. Questions? All clear so far?
Yeah, looks like good.
Perfect. I'm gonna commit this. Add call to tracks. No, to playlist. Tracks. Push. Nice. So now let's implement the last API call. The last API call, it's under personalization. No, sorry, it's on. I was forward. This is in browse. Sorry, browse here. There is something called recommendations. All right. So recommendations is, as I mentioned before, is an API given an input, seed artists, seed genders, tracks, etc. Is the algorithm is going to provide a list of recommendations. In this case, our app is going to be, I mean, it's going to be quite simple. So we're going to use only one artist. The idea here is that we are going to, let's say we're going to modify this link. The name of the track is going to be a link to the API call to get recommendations based on this specific track. Okay, so that's going to be our recommendation system. All right, so where is this? Where is Visual Studio Code? Nice, here. Cool, so we have here tracks. Now, first thing we need to do is to modify, I'm gonna modify the template. So as I mentioned before, every time for the track, the track name is gonna be a link and something like this. Href to the recommendations URL. So the idea is every time I click here, I'm gonna be doing a call to my Express application using /recommendation instead of dashboard. It's gonna be a recommendation, for example, and the recommendations is gonna use the ID of this track and the ID of this artist. Okay, and with all together, we can do the API call to the recommendation API. So then in that case, what I want to do is, this is, what is this? Where's the documentation here? Okay. Track name. I'm going to close this. So let's say I'm going to pass the artist, which is going to be plus artist ID. And then I want to concatenate the track, which is going to be track ID. Okay, so now where is this track ID and artist ID coming from? Okay, I'm going to create a new variable here. It's going to be artist ID. This is coming from track artist again. For some reason, Visual Studio Code is not a fan of the pack syntax. Track ID equal to track and the ID. All right. So we have everything in place. We have the recommendations. Here we are going to be calling the recommendation URL in our Express app, passing the artist and the track. Perfect. So now what we have to do is to again, we need to implement recommendations. So recommendation is going to be like so. Recommendations. Recommendation is receiving as a query parameter from the table the artist ID coming as a query parameter called artist, and also the track ID receiving the query track. Okay, so it's artist and track, right? If I recall correctly, no, it's artist in singular and track. Sorry, my bad. Cool. So now need to do the I'm gonna say this get data, and the API we are gonna be calling is recommendations. And we are going to pass here params. Okay. What is params? Params is going to be params new URL. Oops, new search. Params, we need to send seed artists, seed genders, and seed tracks. All right. So it's going to be seed artist, artist ID. As I mentioned before, I mean, usually it's an array of artists. The more you pass, the better is the recommendation. But in this case, we're going to be using only one. This is up to you if you want to, to improve the behavior. Seed genders. Usually, I mean, we are running out of time, so we're going to assume that everything is rock, okay, for the sake of clarity, and seed tracks, track ID. Cool. We are good to go. Now let's create a new template. It's called recommendation, and we are going to pass something. What can we see? Okay, recommendation. Here we are going to be extending again from here. I'm going to copy. Oops, sorry. We're going to copy and paste this. So we're going to say recommendations. I'm going to remove this. We have the table, and we are going to use tracks again. I think so. We are going to display 3 columns again: the artist, the track name, and the URL, the preview. Okay, so we're going to follow exactly the same. In that case, we don't need this anymore because that's not going to contain any link. Track name is going to be, in this case, this is going to be name because there is no array here. Artist name is going to be, if I recall correctly, this is artist. And the name, perfect. And we don't need this anymore. And this is going to be preview, if I recall, URL, right? Okay. The difference is that this API, the response of this API call does not contain tracks inside the response. So we can skip this track word that was here on the JSON structure before. I think we are good. Artist name. Okay, tracks. Yeah, I think we are good. Nice. Last thing we need to do is we are rendering recommendation, and we need to pass tracks using data.tracks, which is the response of this API. Okay. Cool. What else? What else? I think we are good. Let's give it a try. Let's see how it works. Okay. We log in again. And we have an error. We have an error on the dashboard. Why we have here an error? Dashboard. I think we didn't. Did we modify anything? Ah. Perfect. Let's try again. We log in. Oh, all right. So we have the link here. If you see here on the browser, probably you don't read it correctly. Let me copy this for you. So that's the petition we are going to be sending from the app. Recommendation, passing the artist ID and the track ID. All right. So we click here. We have a nice error. Okay, because I forgot to. Sorry about that. I forgot to change the. Sorry, to remove this. Yes, we are good. No. On recommendation here, we don't need the image because we are interested only on tracks, not in the profile. Perfect. Login. Something similar to REM. Cool. So we have here a bunch of cool songs. Pulp, Neil Young, The Cure. So we can preview this one. Neil Young, for example. Nice. So we have our first recommendation app using the Spotify APIs. Congrats. I'm going to be committing the changes at recommendation call. Okay, so I push the change. And I think we are almost done. Yeah, so next step. What would be the next step? So code improvement, as I mentioned before, there are something that you can do to improve the performance, like error handling. You can improve the recommendation algorithm by passing more artists, more tracks, etc. Another cool improvement would be to integrate the web playback SDK. So you can create a Spotify instant player inside here in your app, your browser. So you can play not only 30 seconds, but the whole track. Yeah, and the last one is what I said before, right? To improve the recommendation algorithm by passing more useful data. And yes, that's pretty much me. I think I'm 1 hour, 30 seconds, sorry, 33 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to hear your questions.